Okay, and welcome to this China Guitar Skeptic video about changing the tubes in the Tiny Terror. First of all, the things you'll need: a marker pen, a suitable screwdriver for removing the screws from around there's 10 screws around the Tiny Terror, and of course your replacement valves. A piece of kitchen towel or soft cloth for wiping and handling, and if you're like me and you're getting a little bit long-sighted in your old age, then your reading glasses so that you can see what you're doing. Oh, and of course, yes, the Great British cup of tea. Yummy. Oh, there's one other thing you may need, and that's a multimeter. Valve amps have an awful lot of very high voltage in them, admittedly not exactly on the top bit that we're opening up, but certainly inside, and safety is paramount. So first, let's open her up. Okay, and now we can see that the outer case, the top case, is removed very easily with the 10 screws. And here is what the orange Tiny Terror looks like inside. This one is particularly dusty. Don't get it in your tea. That's better. Okay, so at the front you'll see the two 12AX7 preamp valves, and at the back the two EL84s, which is the ones that we're going to be placing. They're sprung mounted onto the chassis. First, what I'm doing here is I'm attaching the multimeter to the earth and getting the earth continuity connected up so that I can just put a quick test over various areas of the amplifier before I even touch it. Now, the capacitors that store all the nasty, dangerous, killer 400 plus voltage tend to be on the bottom, on the inside of the circuit board, not on the top, but it's worth taking a multimeter like this, just touching a few of the metal parts to check there's no voltage before you touch it with your fingers. I'm also just checking across the input stage here just to make sure there's nothing leaking back there, and it all looks perfectly okay and safe to touch, so we can move on. Next job is you need to use the cloth. Although it's not like light bulbs, halogen bulbs, grease on valves will deteriorate them quicker, so I just don't touch them with greasy fingers. So you can see here I'm just removing the springs, the spring loaded mounts from the valves, being careful not to touch them, and I'm making a little space because what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark which valve came out of which onto my box. So I'm putting a little 1 here, and I will now remove this valve and put a little 1 on the bottom of the valve. Now, they're fairly easy to remove, and I find that a circular wiggling motion while pulling on them is the quickest and easiest way to pull them out. There we go. We'll mark this one as the one that's coming out of the marked hole, and then I will put that in the box in just a moment after I've taken out the second. Just a little wiggle and a pull, and out she comes. And we'll pop those down out of the way. Now, this is where you will find some residual dangerous voltage or current from the capacitors. So all I'm doing here is just touching each of the terminals on the valve receptor to make sure that I haven't got any dangerous voltage left over. It's just a safety thing. You'll probably get away with it if it's been off for some time, but certainly if you've run the amp in the last few minutes. Okay, out comes our first valve. EL84, this is the JJ valves. They've been reputed as being very, very good, so I wanted to give them a try. Just lining up the 0 pin now, there's a gap in the pins, and then getting them in is the reverse process. A little circular wiggle while applying a fairly even pressure should put them in fairly easily. And I'm marking up that box to say which valve is the one that come out of there. Simple as that. And then we'll put in valve number 2. Again, line it up, little circular wiggle, and they push home relatively easy. And there we have both valves seated, and now I just put the spring mounting covers over. They're actually harder to get back on than they are to take off because this isn't a very heavy amplifier, and as you can see, the force required lifts it off the deck. So relatively simple still, and there they are, the new valves in. And after a bit of a clean up, it's time just to mark up the valve boxes to say what these EL84s were out of, and that's the Tiny Terror. I'll set those to one side, and then we'll just put a little date on the chassis. I like to mark on when I change, the date that I change valves, so that when I come back to look at them, it's quite handy to know how long they lasted. So I'm just putting today's date on the chassis by the power amp valves that have been changed before putting it all back together. Oh, wrong way round. Try again. There we go. And so there we have it. The power amp EL84 valve change in the orange Tiny Terror. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.